Hitler or Osama or Bears fans. I mean, it isn't Mother Teresa, and it isn't you, and it isn't me. The standard of good is God. And the truth is, we weren't even good by the standard of God when we were asleep last night. We aren't good enough sitting here in worship. We weren't good enough at the moment of our birth. We need help. If the bar for being good enough is to be accepted into the presence of God is God, we don't stand a chance on our own. Our lives need something or someone to atone, to make our lives clean before God. We cannot do it on our own. Now, the Day of Atonement was an awesome event in the life of every Jew. In many ways, it still is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur in Hebrew. I mean, back in the day, Yom Kippur carried some serious weight of glory. In the days of the tabernacle, and later in the days of the temple, when there were still sacrifices. The day happened only once a year, still does, happens only once a year in the lives of the Jewish people. I mean, it was different in scope and practice from every other day, every other sacrifice, every other worship event. This was the greatest moment of joy and peace for the people, real peace, that great Hebrew word shalom, the profound feeling and knowledge of wholehearted, whole life well-being. This day, no one got up and went to work. But by all appearances, this day you stayed at home, in fact. And it was a day of stillness. There was a somberness to the day. You knew what the high priest was doing. This was the high priest's day, his greatest moment. His calling on this day was to stand in the presence of God and offer sacrifices of atonement, a substitutionary cleansing by blood for the sin of the people, for his own sin, and for the uncleanness of the temple because people used it. On this day, the high priest wore special clothes. They were rather plain. He took off the colorful clothes that we talked about a few weeks ago, the great ephod and the breastpiece and the turban with its royal crown and its gold front piece. He took those off. He humbled himself. He emptied himself and became nothing to stand in the presence of God. Just simple linen clothing. And on this day, the high priest entered the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, alone, only on this day, once every year, the 10th day of the 7th month. Now, the tabernacle was essentially a very large tent. It moved with the people. They'd take it down. While they moved, they set it up. They knew when to move, when God told them. When God was in the pillar of cloud or the pillar of fire by night, they moved when God rested over the tabernacle. They stayed still. So the tabernacle, essentially, it was about 45 feet by 15 feet long. It was a tent. That's what tabernacle means. And it was divided into two. There was a larger first room. And in that room was an altar of incense, the great menorah, the 7-fingered lampstand. There was the table where what was called the showbread, 12 loaves baked once a week were piled up on this table. And then there was a curtain. And that curtain separated out the Holy of Holies, the most holy place. That's where God's presence was. In the Holy of Holies was the Ark of the Covenant. Inside that ark were the tablets that Moses had carried down. It was the written out promise between God and the people. And over that ark was a covering. It was called the mercy seat, or the atonement cover. No one ever really sat on it, but it was the idea that God, the merciful God, would come and be present in this holy of holy places. And we already know that no one can see the face of God and live because of sin. And so no one went in there. 2 of Aaron's sons had tried. They had gone in unbidden by God. They thought they might be doing something right. But they entered in and they paid with it for their lives. But this day, this one day, the high priest, and the high priest alone, could go into the Holy of Holies. But to do so, he first had to wash himself clean. Wash his whole body, because this special clothing that he wore itself was holy. It was used only on this day. And so his body had to be clean before the holy linen cloth went on his body. And then he had to make sacrifice for himself. So he had a bull. And he had to go through the whole ritual of sacrifice with that bull that has already been laid out. And that ritual was to cleanse his own life and even the life of his family. And then he could take the goats for the sacrifice of the people and make atonement for their sin. The people as a whole, the people of God. And it's very interesting how this would happen. One of the goats chosen by Lot would be killed for the sacrifice, and the blood would be spilled out. It's important to understand that this idea of blood. This is so serious, because blood is life. All throughout the book of Leviticus, we understand that you do not take blood lightly. You don't take it from another person. You don't perform sacrifices lightly, because blood is life. It represents life. And so blood is the appropriate atoning sacrifice for sin, because sin is serious. And God is serious about its atonement. So one goat spills its blood for the life of the people, and one goat is used for memory. See, the high priest would come and he would lay his hands on that goat's head, and he would pray the sins of the people into that goat. And then the goat was led out into the wilderness. The word in Hebrew is Azazel. We don't really know what it means, but the basic idea of it has come to mean scapegoat. The goat was taken out into the wilderness to a place no one knew about, except for the one man who was chosen to lead it out. And it was left there. The idea being that the sins were removed forever, not just from the people, but from the memory of God. As far as the east is from the west, so far as He removed our transgressions from us. Gone. So why does it matter if we hear about this old ritual from an old book in the Bible, so much of which is so hard to understand? I believe there are at least 3 reasons. The first is that it reveals the seriousness of sin. All throughout the Bible, we're given to hear that blood is the stuff of life. We're not to take it lightly. When blood is given to atone for sin, we're to come to an understanding that